Bill Cosby thing, he's gonna go to prison for 3 to 10 years. Well, I think his prison time would be relatively easy, but his reputation is destroyed. I mean, people live for their image, right? The narcissists of the world, I would think that Bill might be in that category. Certainly, he's the kind of narcissist that allowed himself to use women as nothing but pieces of meat. I mean, basically he's one step away from necrophilia, because he would drug these women to have sex with them. Can you imagine? So he's reduced these people. And my question about all this is concerning the shadow. Now, first of all, I don't want to pretend to be too academic, but Durkheim, the great sociologist of France, back in the 1800s, said that people need criminals in order to define their boundaries. Basically, my words. You understand?
It's like a bell curve. It's like
but it's a perceptual thing.
Yeah.
People get to know what's within the boundaries of propriety by seeing those that transgress those boundaries. Okay, and so now they establish the boundaries. You're not supposed to do this. It's as if people are a bunch of sheep. They need to be taught what to. Yeah, and it's true. There's a great deal to that, unfortunately, and that's why some people who think that morality comes only out of authority are looking only at those sheep. But there are other kinds of people who don't need to be taught that, because they're alive to themselves and they understand that another human being, another sentient being, is a sacred being. It's like oneself. They are in that self-relationship that you and I talked about, which would be at the basis of morality. You relate to yourself in the deepest way, the best way. You're alive to your bodily senses. You know how you try to avoid suffering. Why would you do that unto another unless you're so alienated from the other you don't care about its feelings? You're going to be dead to something in order to be that way. And so we talk about a guy like Cosby, but to me the real question is the attitude of the people observing this. It would be amazing to have a dialogue about this with so many people, those who justify and feel angry towards it, and you can understand it, why you'd feel angry towards him, especially a woman, because he violated countless women over the years. He got convicted on one, but there must have been scores of women coming forward over the years that he did that with. So now a lot of people feel justified in that. Now certainly a lot of women, but what about the men too? How do the men feel about it? And all of this, to me, I want to go with this. I want to go back to the shadow. How much self-denial is there, involved in the judgments about this? That's the real question. How much self-deceit?
So we're not just throwing Bill on the cross. It's also the people that are looking at that situation.
Yeah, I mean, look, in the thought of Durkheim, people are defining themselves, but how many men would have a predatory attitude towards women if they were completely free? If they were one of the barbaric tribes, going in and doing whatever they want after they conquer.
Right.
And there are lots of guys with that physicality. You deal with them, don't you? Right? So, I don't know what you think of it.
Well, I mean, to segue, Jordan Peterson was talking about the Gulag Archipelago and how good men turn evil, and the process of which that happens, and how amazing it is, the percentage of people that are completely alienated from their own dark side in the Jungian shadow work and such. How I feel about it? I think a lot of people have to be more honest with themselves and work on their crap a lot more often than they think they do.
I agree. What do you think?
If they think they do at all.
Yeah, what do you think keeps people from doing that? Why can't people be honest and look at their own weaknesses and foibles and...
Fear of rejection, self-idealization, like you'd mentioned, and
Those are nice broad terms that we
Yeah.
use, but they have specific meanings in certain situations. That's what's nice about that. They're existential ideas, but if you look at the specific set of conditions a person in, you get a much better picture of it.
I don't know, go into it.
Well, self-deceit.
Yeah.
Now, I first came upon it many years ago in the early 60s. I was reading Sartre. And he talked about self-deceit, and if I remember correctly, he used a woman as an example of a self-deceiver, how she would allow herself to be put into a situation where she would be seduced, even though she never would accept it as that. And she just simply allows the conditions, to herself to walk into the conditions. Now, self-deceit is not limited to women. And as I've said before, it's tied to self-idealization. And the self-idealization can be represented by something physical, like a lot of guys you deal with are more interested in appearing strong than more
Becoming legendary, I think, right?
There you
Self-idealization and immortality and immortalizing themselves.
I guess if you want to push it that far, but as far as I know, it's a moment-to-moment thing. It's an existential experience.
Branching off of severe insecurity issues.
Yeah, you'd be absolutely right if you spoke about it in those terms and the terms that you just used. I'm not disputing any of that, but I look at the emotional moment, the emotionally ridden moment that accompanies self-deceit. How do you manage to lie to yourself all the time? And I've known people, I knew a guy who was a teacher, but he supposedly was a teacher, but he was an actor. And he wound up doing acting jobs and being involved in movies and stuff, nothing major, and then he croaked. Now, he was a terrible self-deceiver. He was arrogant, and he was proud of being arrogant. Now, you're going to understand arrogance. Any psychologist in the world will tell you is just the other side of the coin of what? Low self-esteem. Arrogance is pumping yourself up to appear to be better than others. You're not better than the universe. The universe will squish you, not even to squish you, will extinguish you without even looking at you. And there is this arrogance that somehow one is superior to other beings and therefore has transcended that whole universe of power. I am greater than you, and then it kills you. It lets you kill yourself. It teaches you. It leads you into wherever you want to go, and you kill yourself. You wind up with a cancer or your heart disease or whatever killed him. I don't know.
You get hit by a giant tree that's just floating through.
No, it won't even do that to you. It'll let you do it yourself.
Yeah.
It'll put you in situations. I can do anything. So, again, I don't mean to just pick on these people as if I'm somehow higher, because I got to be living in some form of self-deceit. I think I do. You know what it is? It's the self-deceit where I think that I am only this embodied being, the limited embodied being. I talk all the time about the connection between the physical body, which is made of energy, which is all energy. You're all made of energy, and you are grounded in the matrix. The matrix is not just through your feet, it's around us. We are swimming in the ocean of energy. We are energy blurbs, coalescences of certain kind of energy where we think that we're somehow separate from the whole. And we live that kind of existential anxiety, it's angst that we live, because the sense of separation produces an anxiety. It's the word angst that comes out of the German, I think, and it's a deep kind of anxiety. You don't think about it, you don't wring your hands, but you live your life driven by that angst. Because you're fighting against the nothingness of your being. Right. Basically, that's what it really comes down to. You're so limited, and as far as you know, as far as Sartre taught, consciousness by its nature is made of nothing. It's lineant. It doesn't have any substance at all. It's just always embracing something that has substance. The world of images it comes to. Oh, there's so much to say about that intellectually. But you're living moment to moment with this fundamental existential condition. This sense of separateness, which is so profound, so universal, so pervasive, that if you look at the human world in all of its advertisements, its Facebook, its storytelling, it's always about the individual. We live as the individuals. And then there are crazy people who think that they can reduce individuality through a political movement and make it like socialism or communism,
Right.
as if that's going to work, as if it ever did work before.
Right.
I mean, the Soviet Union not only killed millions of its own people, but it was brought down by what? By the individuals who destroyed the economy by doing 60 to 65% of the economy underground. The black market killed the Soviet Union. They couldn't keep up with the U.S. in building all kinds of stuff. They were outspent, and the black market had a lot to do with it. Yeah, you try to control people. Let's legislate brotherhood and sisterhood.
Right.
Let's make sure that everybody has everything. Everybody has equal amount, even though you worked your ass off for yours, and you came out of a different difficult beginning too. But you're supposed to give it all away to people who never did anything. That's amazing horseshit, and it's sad. I mean, I always tended to lean to the left. I've always been, kind of liberal. I care about people, but then there's destroying yourself by pretending that you can live according to an ideal in a world that will not allow that. You've got to have practicalities. This is what I mean. If I did this to a class in psychology in high school many years ago. Imagine now, I've taught them Kant and the categorical imperative to always do the very best thing you can possibly do under all circumstances, okay? As if you are establishing the precedent for a universal law that everyone has to follow. This is what you're going to do, okay? And then you're pressed into a position of power, like you're the governor of Rhode Island. And during the winter, you're faced with all kinds of conflicting problems. The police go on strike, the nurses go on strike, okay? There's a giant snowstorm. The workers are not going to be working. They're not paid correctly. They've been on strike. You don't have anybody plowing the streets. All kinds of things come together to produce an insoluble situation. And the only way you can get it solved, is by making a deal with probably the most powerful man in the state, is a mafia chief. And let's not think that did not exist at some point, with bishops and people like that under his wing, paying people by bribing people so much. And thus your choice is to allow the state to suffer massive deaths and tragedies, or to save the state by making a deal with the devil. And interesting results come out of that. Yeah, and a lot of people don't understand that human conditions will always present us with a moral dilemma. Some psychiatrists will say that and not just psychiatrists, people like Dostoevsky, that insanity is the result of a moral quagmire. An inability, Peterson said that too? That insanity will be the result of not being able to resolve something morally in your own life, how you perceive your moral life, which is always based on relationship. So I'd be interested in what people think. Are they going to look down on Cosby? You scumbag. I hope that they kill you in prison. That kind of attitude. How many people are saying that? I wonder how much they understand about their dark side. I have seen the dark side in ministers. I've seen the darkness. They're just as evil as anybody else. And many of them harbor terrible lusts in their hearts. Even Jimmy Carter mentioned, when he's running for president, he was interviewed in Playboy, and he said that he used to go to church and lust after the women. How many guys do I know who've done that? They go to church and I look at all the girls. One of my Christian friends mentioned that to me. So he went through an epiphany. He had some kind of vision, actually. It's a spectacular thing where his whole life was changed. Hallucination of a sort. Amazing stuff used to go on with people. And he wasn't even a drug user or a drunk. He and his wife both had vision after going to one of those charismatic meetings. So they got converted. Yeah, amazing stuff. I could describe, I was told, they divulged to me what they experienced. But it would take a conversion of that sort. You know what I mean? To change the heart. Because we basically live in this world of low-life practicalities.
Right.
And we're not sitting in the Himalayan mountains meditating in our minds. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Unless
Absolutely.
you're doing what Krishnamurti said, unless you're doing what Maharaj, Nisargadatta Maharaj said, if you're paying attention now, unless you're doing that, you're not meditating.
It's just, well, and I think about the implications of retraining a brain to just think down a certain path, and how many times you'd have to set up those dominoes to be knocked over in the same way every time, thinking down a certain path. So you just reinforce a certain cognitive behavior to be able to get to the point of being in a state of non-separation, being in a state of embodiment awareness, and being able to perceive and exist, and then make judgment and
You're right.
experience it. It's like,
It's really a very difficult place to get to.
what a
isn't it?
condition, right? Like,
Yeah.
what an amazing amount of going inward would have to take place, followed by an amazing amount of external experience where your judgments and your actions would not compromise the embodied state, where you don't betray that state with previous conditions that you've experienced.
What do you
perhaps.
think of violence? What do you think of controlled contests of violence?
A long time ago, I stopped trying to compete in those terms. I when I was very young, I figured out by reading a lot of the guys that had done that on a real scale, like a Musashi.
Mm-hmm.
So Musashi, who decided that he was a worthless human being, he went off and trained himself and read poetry and trained art and trained fighting and had, I want to say, like something like 70 to 80 duels. He got so good at fighting people that he stopped using a real sword and he started using a wooden sword.
Oh, I know.
And he still killed people.
He still killed people with a wooden sword.
And he was with a monk one day, and he's sitting in the woods, and a snake comes up, and the snake's like rearing back, like to bite him.
Hmm.
And he looks at the snake, and the snake like backs off. This is like a legend.
Well, there's a legend.
Right.
We don't
The
really
snake
know.
backs off. We have no idea how good.
Yeah.
And then the snake goes right across the monk's lap, and right back into the woods.
Uh-huh. It's a nice story.
Right. It would be nice if this was real.
My
But-
favorite. I have a favorite, but I'll tell that you later. You keep going.
Well, the idea being that he was just constantly trying to overcome adversity through the external, but he's just fighting himself over and over again. So
Oh, that's interesting.
he's just creating the problem over and over
So
again.
that's excellent. That appeals to me because I see this going on. You can work and work and work and work, and you can delude yourself into thinking you've changed yourself, like some of my friends from Massachusetts. I'm enlightened, I'm self-realized. No, you're not. You're the same guy.
Mm-hmm.
You've just seen your crap.
Well, I see the same thing in competition. So people, they want to get stronger in a certain way, and then they realize, well, I got strong in this way, but I'm actually weaker in this way now. oh shit, I have to go back and I have to get strong in this way, and they're just constantly chasing their own fucking tail
That's interesting.
in training. It's amazing.
Really? Huh?
I mean, I have gotten frustrated with it with myself, only to come to realize a more fatalistic perspective on it, which is that it's always going to be work.
Yeah.
And that's fine.
Yeah.
And that's why I enjoy training. I enjoy the act of training as a meditative practice. I don't give a fuck about competition. All competition does is it gives you parameters to work within.
Yeah.
For somebody to, I heard a quote once that said, if competition is the greatest achievement, why do we pick the most reachable of achievements?
Nice.
So it's
That's evidence of the alienation between people. So competition's always going to be there.
the only competition that seems to make any sense to me is a competition of life and death.
I fully agree.
That's
well,
it.
Of course.
That's it. And it's just like there are no rules to that. It's just
my
like
nephew, of course. If you didn't get this by now, I would have been very disappointed.
Yeah.
You've understood this for a very long time, but a lot of people don't get that yet.
Yeah.
If you say that to them, if they're reasonable types, they might say, oh yes, yes, but then they don't live their lives that way.
right.
People do not live their lives for the sake of an elevation. They live their lives for the betterment of conditions.
Right.
And that
It reinforces the false ideology of themselves.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. There is a kind of ideology of the self, and it somehow sees itself in great happiness under certain nice conditions.
It's not to, let me throw in there that it's not to say that you can't enjoy experiences that you experience, but it's like the entire thing is, you're experiencing the entire thing. The good and the bad are all experience, and maybe someone would benefit from not going through such highs and lows if they could just learn to enjoy every part of it instead of just the parts that they are idealizing.
Yeah, well, that's a good point, but sometimes the bad parts are so bad that you want to run away from them.
Right.
They can be pretty awful. I just wanted to point out something. At the beginning of my question, when I asked you about your point of view of competition, of course in Miracles is openly said, using the body for attack is a sin.
Right.
And I fully agree. The fact is that we are sentient beings. We feel. So to give pain to another human being is a contradiction to the fundamental identity that you have attained as a Buddhist, Christian, empty consciousness.
As in, why would you want to?
Yeah, there you go. And there's the rubs, and I use that word carefully. The rub comes when the bodies rub against one another. They bounce against one another because there is this thing called lack. And it comes out of the heart of the consciousness, but it also manifests in terms of the reality of the conditions. There are some people who lack food and clean water. And then there are others who are living in Hollywood with $350 million. And they feel lack every bit as much as the people in the other place. Only they're not dying today. They're not. Their lives are not in danger, but their spirit is in danger. Thus, you find such a corruption in that Hollywood society.
Right.
Now you've got guys coming out like Eastwood and people like that talking about how morally corrupt it is at those levels in Hollywood.
Their lives are not directly in danger, but you could draw on a map how they would follow a path of self-destruction.
Oh,
Easily.
and
Like
then
within